We're trying to keep a tight ship and not kind of fall into the stereotypes of black events. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So first of all, welcome to the first of our speaker series. One of the thoughts behind this is, obviously with BYP, we've been building out and trying to get the black professional community together. And I was thinking, like, it's cool that we happy hour and party and stuff, and that's important because it helps to build community and network. But like, we got to start talking about like the real stuff that's happening that's going to influence Baltimore and highlighting cats within the network who are like really doing it, right? Like even within this room, like outside of the lobby, there's some really impressive people here. Y'all just don't know those stories. And so while it's cool when we're kicking it and drinking, y'all will like, maybe you have the chance encounter of running into that person. But if you don't have that chance encounter, you might not understand kind of the power, the intellectual capital that's in that room. And so what we want to do here, and we're not, we could have gone bigger. We sold out on this event. We wanted to keep it small because rather than it just being like a party and kicking it, we want us to have like real conversations, to be able to talk, get to know each other, make introductions, and figure out how we can kind of work together and help each other out. Just in terms of the space where we're at, I'm very proud of this space. So myself, as well as some other friends of mine and members of BYP, we invested and bought this block. So the apartment is 11 commercial units on the ground level, 31 residential on top. We're renovating all the residential. They're about done. And then we're going to focus on the commercial. So this is kind of the first of our attempt to kind of help to activate this. Well, not the first, because we had the Wine and Liquor Festival, but we are activating this block. I have long said, with all the intellectual capital that we have in Baltimore, we're trying to build a Black Wall Street. And it requires placemaking and living together and what can happen if we like aggregate in a space. And so that's what this is about. With that, let's focus and turn to why we are here. So Delali Zarasa, I've known Delali. He and I actually, when I first moved to Baltimore in 2013, so I moved here to work, but I was living in Laurel because I was like, ain't no way, I was coming from DC and I was like, ain't no way in hell I'm living in Baltimore. So I lived in Laurel for the first year and then I ultimately got an apartment right downtown. And Delali and I lived in the same apartment complex and we became friends. And I remember he used to come to my boxing matches and he would come and kick it in my apartment. And we just became really cool. And, a decade later, right, because if that was in 2013 or so, like I have been able to see the growth and like the wild success of Delali, right? And I know that some of you, because now every time I open up the BBJ, I'm hearing about Delali or I'm reading about Delali. So for those who don't know kind of the journey, it might seem that like he just came and just like started popping. And so I want us to kind of talk and so he can share with us a bit about like his journey, kind of what makes him who he is. He's a family man. There are so many different aspects of him. And like just that idea about like all these different aspects is important. I was talking to Kwame earlier this morning and we were just talking about like, how we're like whole people, right? Like even as you're doing business, you're still trying to figure out family stuff and like how do you work and balance those things. And so that's what these conversations are supposed to be. This is our first one. I'm trying to be on my David Rubenstein. Whoever doesn't know who David Rubenstein is, that's Bloom. That's this guy. It's like a private equity guy who's like a multi-billionaire. I clearly am not a multi-billionaire, nor am I even like a 100 millionaire. However, I'm gonna see if I can do my interview stuff. So with that, Delali Zarasa. Delali is, if you all have been paying attention, Delali is the CEO of Fearless. It is one of the largest and one of the fastest growing, certainly Black-owned companies. I actually I hate when I say that because like it's just like a dope company. and it's been growing like crazy. And I say black owned because that's what that's the rankings that I be seeing. Like he's like the largest black owned, one of the largest black owned companies in Maryland. But just a great company, right? And they've been growing and taking up spaces. And it's not just shouldn't be like only black owned. It's just a great company. And so he's also, in addition, for those that don't know, Delali actually was a brainchild of like the person who like originally thought about BYP. We were like all like talking individually. We're like, man, like we don't know where to find all the other black professionals. Like we know they exist, but we don't ever see them hanging out after. And so Delali was a person that was like, let's pull people together. He pulled like 5 of us together. I remember we met down in like the place that was right beside our apartment complex and started talking about like, let's just start a group. And we invite 1 or 2 people every month. And let that go organically. And so he was the one that really pulled this all together. And so to see kind of where we are now, based on kind of that foundation, is really telling. Like he's always just been a builder. But in addition, like I feel like I'm just like, I'm like, it's so much, right? Like, so he also has started clothing company, so Fearless Sports, where he's, we can talk about that. And has, started a Hutch program, which, Fearless does a lot of work with the federal government. And so they have started this program to basically help other young entrepreneurs build up their companies to be able to work with the federal government as well. So we just all around like a dope person. So with that, I'll let him start talking a little bit. So
Benroy's never said a nice thing. I feel like I see the camera. I'm gonna cut up a million reels of Benroy saying nice things. Amazing.
That's fine, because I'm gonna use this. I'm like, I was been talking about this. All right, so I have questions here. Yep. But I guess first start. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Talk about kind of like your family and like your upbringing. Were you born here? Kind of tell us about a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a first generation American. My parents are Ghanaian. My mom is a retired nurse and studied in the UK. My dad is an engineer and a business guy, so he studied in the States. Mom comes over here, has 3 boys. I'm the youngest of 3. I'm the baby. I'm amazing. And both of my older brothers were terrorists growing up. They're a little bit better now. But my parents split when I was pretty young. So I was about 4 or 5 when my parents divorced. And so my mom, as an immigrant, first generation, she's scared of everything, right? You can't go outside, don't have friends, do this, right? So we pretty strict house growing up. And she worked all the time. So we'd see our friends, they going out, they're hanging out, they got some new shoes, they got the video games, and we can't do any of that stuff, right? And so, like the Reebok pumps came out, and it was like the Payless version. Trying to give me the Payless version. Like, I can't wear these, right? And said, you want other stuff, you got to work for it. You figure it out. So as kids, we kind of had to hustle. And we knocked door to door. I saw my brothers doing it. But, I mean, everything that you might imagine, from cutting grass, walking dogs, paper routes, painting. It really was, what can we do with some money? Knocking on doors, right? Shoveling snow, raking leaves, all that stuff, right? So it's another reason why I really empathize and see myself in a lot of squeegee boys. Like we hustled, right? I mean, that's what all it is, right? What can I do for a couple bucks, right? Eventually, someone will let you cut their grass for $10, right? And so I think that's where the entrepreneurial kind of spirit was birthed in me at a pretty young age. So kind of fast forward that, expectations were pretty high growing up. Again, my brothers, they're both super smart. Both really athletic.
But like talk about it. Like your brothers are like.
So there's like, 3 of us. Like, so there's 3 of us. There's 3 of us, and there's what 8 degrees between the 3 of us. I have 1. So they didn't want my mom to love me at all, right? So they're like, why don't you go do something? Your brother's doing, go do something to life. So that's kind of what I had to grow up in, you know what I mean? And so there was always this sense of like push and try to find my way and all of that. So high school was challenging to me, right? I just didn't apply myself. I wanted to be outside, didn't study much. My freshman year, my highest GPA coming out of freshman year was a 2.2. And I was like, oh my gosh, My brother's like, you're so dumb. Right? and,
No, that
and that's
family
got
was
say
not-
again?
That immigrant family.
Oh
was
my
happy
gosh, my
with
mom
that.
was, my mom
that.
punishing all the time. And I'm the knucklehead of the group, right? So I'm in class talking. So 100% of the time that the teacher called the school, it was me. Every single time. She's like, what'd Jelani do? It was like clockwork, right? So there was a pretty stark contrast, between us growing up. So that kind of went through early stage high school. Something clicked my sophomore year, and my oldest brother. So we're all about 2 years apart. My oldest brother had gone off to undergrad at UMBC. I'd never been on a college campus before that, so I'm going up there. I'm visiting him, and I'm seeing all these people doing dope stuff, and it's almost like a light bulb kind of went off. And so from sophomore year to senior year, things turned around. Grades got better. Started applying myself, really got interested in what the future had to hold. So came time for undergrad, and I applied to exactly one school, early admissions, and I was going to Virginia Tech. I was going to be a Hokie. When my boys went there, I went to go visit. I was like, it's dope. I don't feel like doing 1,000 applications. If I can get in, that's where I'm going. My mom had other plans. UMBC is literally the only school on planet Earth I didn't want to go to. Both of my older brothers were there at the time. Both of them had scholarships. I didn't have one going in, right? And so it was kind of like, I need to just go do my own thing. I lost that fight, ended up at UMBC, and just an amazing journey started in the process. So I studied computer engineering there. In my second year that I was there, they started an entrepreneurship program. So at that point, it was a non-credited program. So we were trying to figure out, is this a degree? Is this a certificate? We're not sure. Take some classes on your own time, give us some feedback. And I loved it, right? And so I felt like I had the hustle. So I could knock on doors, right? But I mean, what was the business plan? How do you do that? How do you look at numbers and projections? Like, I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. And so I was fascinated. And I was pretty convinced coming out of that sophomore year that I was gonna start a business. In fact, after that, I had a number of startups in undergrad. And I've done all sorts of weird stuff and failed at all sorts of amazing things. So people look at Fearless like, you guys are blowing up. I'm like, it is my fifth or sixth venture. So, and the other ones were spectacular failures. So one of the first ones in undergrad, I ran a barbershop and did not know how to cut hair. So that's kind of cool. Everyone at NBC probably tell you the story. But I learned how to cut.
That was one of the things you did very well.
I learned, but how that happened was my older brother had a pair of clippers. I'm broke, can't cut my hair. Get a little even Steven, trim it down, some clippers in a guard. And someone on the floor actually came by, maybe my roommate, I can't remember, and said, "Oh, I know, you cut hair?" And I was like, "Yeah." Sit down, right? I want you. And so a haircut that should have taken 20 minutes, I'm sweating. I'm like, oh my God, right? This is gonna be terrible, right? And after that, I was like, the light bulb went off, and again, the hustle spirit kind of woke up. I was like, I can make money doing this. So what I said was that semester, everyone got free haircuts. So all of my peers, both my brothers were there. I cut their hair, I cut all their friends' hair. Everyone got a free haircut. Second semester, you got your first haircut free. You had to pay for the rest. By third semester, I was good, and everyone had to pay. But I figured if I messed you up, it was free. What you going? You ain't pay for it. And so the first hustle was born. I mean, we were cutting hair. I mean, you remember we were cutting hair in rooms in the basement.
You didn't know how to cut hair. You was really good.
One of the ones I trained on.
The lottie was tight.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Yeah. So I cut all around campus. So it was me. I probably cut half the school. So that was an interesting experience. I had a bunch of other startups. So I won't necessarily go through all of those, but major setback happened for me in undergrad. I broke one of my mom's cardinal rules. 2 rules growing up. She's like, 3 boys, we immigrants. Number 1, better not ever get a call from the police. None of you gets arrested. That was rule number 1. Number 2, 3 boys.
I already know.
No one brings a baby into this house.
There we go.
So here I am, the one who struggled in high school. Here I am, the only one that didn't get a scholarship. Here I am, the knucklehead, get into school, and I'm like, you're gonna be a grandmother. Excuse me? And I remember both my brothers in grad school when I found out, They were out of town. One was in North Carolina. One was at Georgia Tech. I called them and said, I gotta come home. She gonna kill me. I drove to my mom's house and she's like, hey, she gave me a hug. And so my middle brother, she's like, what you doing here? And then so my oldest brother, she's like, and she was like, what happened? What is going on? She got really scared. So I remember telling her, and I thought my life was over. And life wasn't over. Family chipped in and helped me get through. But I was determined to drop out at that point. Didn't think I was gonna make it. And friends and family really chipped in. Everyone will tell you, I mean, my kid grew up on campus. Between his mom's at University of Maryland, so he was back and forth like every other day. They'd watch him while I go to class, and so he grew up. He finished college with me, and so that was a pretty instrumental time in my life. So at that point, it was you gotta be a grown up. I was 21, and yes, I got to do class, but now I got to buy diapers. You know what I mean? I gotta worry about a whole other human. So I'm a grown up now, and I think at that point, I tell people all the time, Fearless would have always been here, but it came faster because of Dominic, my oldest kid. Right? It was you got to figure this thing out. So I'll pause there.
Yeah.
It's a lot more after that, but that's kind of how things started and getting through undergrad before I really started to get some opportunities after that.
Pause point, actually. So you said Fearless would have always been here. Was Fearless something that you thought about in college, or like when did Fearless like come about?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I tried a bunch of things, and I think some of those other ventures, I learned a lot through those ventures, right? So some were on the tech side, building technology and websites and things like that. There were others, so through undergrad, I got pretty serious about my faith. And so I was volunteering a lot at church, helping out with the youth, helping out with the young adults in that space. And I was excited about it, right? And that's a space where I wasn't getting paid. It was just, I was volunteering, right? And enjoyed helping people. And I don't think I realized this until much later in life. It was a really big blend of an influence of my mom, who's a nurse. So we grew up in hospitals and nursing homes and stuff like that and helping people, and we hated it, right? We're like, we just want to go outside. She's like, nah, you got to go serve people. But that stuff kind of gets in you, right? It gets in your DNA, this idea of helping folks. And so that became a thing. I'm going to come back to that part in a little bit. But so I got this business thing, and I'm trying to figure out startups, and they're failing, and they're not necessarily working. And I'd always felt like I was going to go do work in the business sector, right? That's where I was going to grow, and I didn't know what it was. I got an interesting job out of college. Recommendation from our president to an entrepreneur, because I said I want to start a company. And he said, this guy's an alum, maybe he can help you. I had a couple other offers coming out of school, and so I was like, I don't know this guy. Let me go tell him I want to start a business, see what he says, see if he help me, right? So I go there, and day one, I'm like, I want to start a business. I want office hours. I gave a list of demands, right? And he's probably thinking who is this kid, right? And he kind of didn't know what to do with me. And he's like, okay. And I got a job there, and ended up programming for them, doing some front end work. The second year that I was there, they won $200 million contracts, and they were about a 150-person company at the time. And I somehow talked my way into becoming number 2 on one of them. I was like, give me more to do. I want to learn. I want to grow. And I was complaining. The guy that just was running the contract, he was saying, I need help to kind of get this thing off the ground. And they looked at him and looked at me and said, you go help him, right? And so I learned all about how the business worked, right? And the back end of that. I'm going to get back to the church stuff in a second. So again, that was my world. I was going to go do work in that space. Volunteering church at that point, I started a young adult organization at our church that had grown pretty significantly. It was about 600 people. And I'm running weekends and evening helping people. And I was like, I never want to go work at church full time. And I stopped doing that. I said I was going to step down. Things were just, I was stretched, right? Doing a lot, working at the time. So I stepped down and it falls apart. And a year later, people start calling me and say, hey, bring it back. We need to connect with people and community and all that stuff. It's not going anymore. And I was like, I'm not doing it. And eventually got to the point where I just kind of broke down. I was like, fine, I'll go do it. I'll go work and I'll go do church work, right? Because impact was always such an important part of my life and something I cared about. So I wrote a proposal. I'm writing a pitch, and this is why you should do it, and this is what it's gonna cost, and had a petition, and 100 people signed it and all that stuff. And I sent it, and they had me go pitch in front of the board. And they were like, this is great, this is awesome, we love it, but we can't do it. I'm like, wow, do you know I privileged you to come, right? I'm thinking like, how dare you? I'm agreeing. You know the episode with Martin where he's like, fine, Gina, I will marry you now. Are you happy? It was one of those like, fine, I'm here, I'm gonna work, I'm gonna do the church work. And they're like, no, we can't afford it. And I don't think I realized it then until much later. I think Fearless was born that day. I never wanted anyone that wanted to go do good to not be able to do it because of money. So it was crystal clear that I was going to for-profit business. And that was probably my trigger.
Wow. All right, so let's talk about Fearless, because that's what everybody knows you for. So, like, talk about that journey. Like, as I said, because I've known you for 10 plus years at this point, I understand kind of a bit about the journey. Not obviously not all the details, but I remember us talking about the company a decade ago.
Yeah.
Like, how is that? Like, talk to us about like what that was like. What was that growth like? When did you start to believe, oh, this can really be something, and not just like something that we're trying to do good, but like can actually have some real impact?
I was looking through the timeline, and so after that church thing happened, a couple months later, me and two partners tried to start a company, and it was a tech company. And we were meeting on the weekends and nights and trying to pull the plan together and all that other stuff. And I felt like I was running faster than everybody else, right? And I was like, I'm determined, like that just happened. Like I'm doing this, I'm all in. And I didn't feel at that moment that everyone was all in. So I remember having to tell them saying, I think I need to do this by myself, right? And they were offended.
Are you still cool with these people?
Yeah.
Right.
One has a business now, he's doing pretty good.
Just not Fearless good.
Huh?
Just
He's
not
still
Fearless.
good. He's still good. Leave that man alone. But I had to tell him that you all keep going, no disrespect, but I feel like I need to do this kind of on my own. And 2 months later, Fearless was registered. So I registered the company February 5th, 2009. So our 15th birthday is about to come up. And
Salute to that. Because black owned companies don't last 15 years.
And so it's registered, and then it's the now what, right? And I assumed, again, the company that I worked for out of college, they had gotten acquired. So we went from a couple hundred to thousands overnight, right? And felt like a number in that system. But I felt like, and over time, those people started to go to different companies. And so in my mind, great, I know all these people, all these companies now. I'm gonna go around and do 15 meetings, and I'm coming back with 15 contracts. It's gonna be easy, right? Didn't work like that, right? So I'm having these conversations and like nothing is happening, right? And they're like, "You guys sound pretty cool. How big are you?" I'm like, "Oh, we're like one person." I'm like, yeah, "We'll call us in, call us in a couple years." So that first year was just trying to figure it out, right? Talking to a lot of mentors of, am I doing it right? Am I doing the right things? Do I need to call? Trying to get all the paperwork ready to do business in the government. My previous company had worked in that space, and so I knew a little bit of the market. But it took almost a year and a half before the first contract came. What's interesting is during that time, a friend of mine had convinced me, I forget, like maybe this movie out talking about bucket lists. And he was like, we gotta get ready to bucket list, right? Everyone's creating bucket lists. And somehow, I don't know how, but somehow he convinced me to put running a marathon on my bucket list. And I'm like, I'm a sprinter. Long distance is anything more than one lap. Like, what makes you think I'm running 26.2 miles, right? He convinced me to do it, and so I'll train for the marathon. That marathon coincided with that first year of trying to get the company off the ground. And I think in hindsight, it was extremely instrumental in the process. The act of, when people say all the time, right, starting a business is like running a marathon. You don't know what that is until you actually run a marathon, right? You can't compare the analogy. It's a sense of, I'm out here running for hours, like, why? This is stupid. Like, why are we out here? Like, this is dumb. Let's go home. Like, and to do that, it's mental. Like, so much of that is mental. You know what I mean? And so, having to go through that process and learn how to just like, keep pushing. Yeah, that's okay. It's been a mile. You got 25 left. Keep pushing, right? It was learning how to set goals. And I remember asking my friend who was training me for it, and I said, I don't think I can run 26 miles. He said, and he looked at me and said, yeah, you don't have to. I'm like, I don't know. I'm looking at my registration. It says 26 miles. And what he taught me was, he said, look, you see that fire hydrant right there? I said, yeah. He said, you just gotta get to the fire hydrant. I said, okay. Running. 5 minutes later, we get to the fire hydrant. I said, all right, now what? He said, I can't run 2060. You don't got to. You see that light pole? You just got to get to the light pole. And you get to the light pole, right? And you get to the street, and you get to this, and you get to that, right? And before you know it, you've broken this huge thing up to like really small goals, right? And you've run 26 miles. And that happened. I was working full time and trying to get the business off the ground for, again, about almost a year and a half. Knocking on doors, everything's shutting. And I remember that experience from a kid, like knocking on doors, right? But I was gonna get $10 from somebody, right? And I'd come home tired from a 9 to 5, and it's like, all right, how do I get through? I see a big thing for the company. How do I get there? And it's like, you don't have to. Just do one thing. Send one email today. Make one phone call today. Just do one thing, one step, one little goal. And so like the thinking of the running and the training for marathon was exactly what I was doing for the business that night, right? Just doing a thing over time. But I think it was April 2nd or April 4th of 2010, I got my first contract. And we were born. I quit my job. It was a company of one. And I was terrified. and this thing was real. And it was something my wife and I talked about a lot about. Beautiful wife Letitia over there. And like how to actually take the plunge, right? And how we're going to make this work. And it was really a balancing act, right? So she's a physician. She was in residency at that time, pediatrics. And so you're working like 80 hours a week, right? So she had the stable job, and we timed it. When she graduated, finished residency, she had the stable job, and I said, all right, so let me get my turn, and we did. And so she actually bankrolled the company when we were getting off the ground.
That's a good woman right there.
She tells me, she's like, where's my check at? Where's my check? I need my check at. Where's my return? But in order to really give the business a chance to get off the ground, we needed to make sure that we put as much money as we could like into the business, right? And so services businesses are a little bit different, right? You work, you bill, you get a check that comes in, right? And there was $0 in the bank. We didn't have a bunch of reserves. And so the period ended on the 15th or the 30th. At 5 o'clock, I was invoicing at 5:01. I'm like, I need my money. And so for a lot of our customers, what we said was, we're willing to take a lower rate as you pay us in that 15. And so for them, they could float it. I'll take less, but I need the cash coming in now. And so we did that. We also cut expenses, ended up moving out of our house. That was the biggest expense we had at the time, and convinced my mom to let me and my family move back in her house. So
not just you, but you and your wife
and my family,
and your baby.
Yes, and my baby. To move in the house. And so my wife was gracious enough to allow us to do that. But I had a limit. She was like, but you got a year. We're going to live here, but we're going to live here for a year. Yeah. So whatever you're going to do, you got a year to figure this thing out. And we moved out in 10 months. So, and that's actually when we moved to Baltimore. So that's how Fearless got started.
So you talked about, do one thing, get to the next thing. But I feel, and obviously working very hard. But I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs can think, oh, we're just trying to get to that next thing. Like, what was that difference? What was that point at which you were like, okay, like, what differentiates you from like other entrepreneurs that you see and why they might not be successful, whereas you have been so successful?
Yeah, I think the difference, and I'll compare me to me, right? This was my first venture. And each thing was a lesson learned. Every other time, it had been something on the side, a side hustle, right? Kind of doing it, hedging the bet, I'm trying to get this thing off the ground. This is the first time where I was all in. All in. There isn't a plan B. This is going to work because I'm going to make it work, right? And when you start to do that, something unlocks in the business because I'm gonna knock on as many doors as possible until I get this contract. There isn't like we're not going back to something else. You know what I mean? I've uprooted the family from the house, my mom's house. Like it's working. You know what I mean? It's working. And so like something happens, you get hungry, and you make things start to click when you remove that safety blanket kind of out of the way. So I think that's the thing for me that made it real.
Yeah. So like, on the same thing of like just individual milestones. Like talk to us about what it felt like. You talk about getting your first contract. Like at what when you hit $1 million in revenue,
Yep.
5 million in revenue, like what are you thinking at that point from where you started to like getting to these more significant contracts, and how are you guys able to kind of keep that momentum going?
Yeah. You have to feed the beast, right? And so we started to company one within that first year. We had enough revenue coming in to hire a second person and then a third person, right? We never had investment, right? We've never had a big external injection of capital. We've never raised capital before. So all of Fearless's growth has been organic. He was like, "Why'd you do that? Why did you get money?" I didn't know that you could do that. Yeah, no one taught me. I never saw people raising money around me. I don't know. I didn't run away from it. I didn't, I probably would have taken some help. so I didn't know any better. So all of it was organic. But I mean, we grew year over year, right? So the first year we lost $6,000. That's what went in. Second year we did about $300K. Third year we did 830. Then we did 850. Then we did $1 million. Then $1.5 million. Then we did 4. Then we did 7, 16, 34, 75, and last year we did 100.
So it sounds like you just were like this, like you basically went that way, and you talk about setbacks, because most entrepreneurs don't just go increase revenue every year. It's an up and down roller coaster ride, and maybe within the journey there were roller coasters, but you just might not understand. Like talk to us about some of those kind of ups and downs that you experience as a business owner.
Yeah, and it always happens, right? And so Fearless, I'm going to give you a little bit of context, right? So today, our total universe is probably about 500 people, right? A little about over 270, 280 W-2 employees, and the rest full-time subcontractors and vendors that support us in our organization. And so people are like, oh, that's blowing up. You guys are blowing up. What they don't see is it took 7 years to get to 14 people. 7, right? And so much of that was how do we develop the culture? How do we make sure that we've got kind of that internal connection, the family ties, all that other stuff. And many of those people are still here with us today. And so a lot of that was trying to figure out like our values and our culture of the organization, right? In the services business, if you're a good technology, you can go anywhere, right? You can go anywhere. You can kind of work on whatever project you want to. And so the only thing that differentiates one company from another in this space is your culture. And it's something that I learned pretty early in the business, but we struggled to do that, right? Those first 7 years, one, they were slow because we didn't know what we were doing, trying to figure it out and build the engine of the company and all of that. When we started off, our primary customer base was DoD and Intel. That's a market I'd grown up in. I knew a little bit of that space. So when I started, that's where I started. And
so for the uninitiated, DoD,
Department of Defense and the intelligence community, right? So the bulk of our work, we were building software in that market. And our folks, I was talking about this vision, and here's the culture, and it's gonna be great, we're gonna do all these amazing things. And our people were like, cool, we're here for the ride. But they had a couple complaints. One, we want to work together, right? And we were working in classified buildings, and a couple people in this building, and a couple people in this building. We had a couple of contractors spread out. And their biggest complaints was we want to be together. And so I think for us, one thing that really became an inflection point was when we moved into Baltimore City. The really big push for that was we wanted to get our people together, control the culture, right, and work a little bit differently. DoD is also a space where you can work on a bunch of cool projects. You can never tell anybody, right? What do you work on? Can't tell you, but it's dope. Dope. And we were trying to get in other markets and healthcare and other clients. Say, okay, well, cool. You have a portfolio. Can't show you though. Can I call somebody? Nope. Are you sure? Yeah, but it's super dope though. Trust us. So we were struggling to like, how do you break out of this world, right? We had to start over. We almost had to start over as a company. And so we moved to downtown, and that meant that some of our customers fired us. That means that we fired some of our customers and said, this is how we're going to work. And we started to get really vocal about our values. For us, success was three things, right? And everyone said the first, right? You want your customers to be better, faster, stronger, cheaper, whatever it is, right? So we want to take care of our customers and make sure we're driving impact there. The second one was have an amazing employee experience and a culture for the people that work there in the organization. How do you make it sticky so people want to be there, not feel like they have to be there, right? And number three, community, right? If the community in this case for us, Baltimore City, was no different as a result of us being there, then that was like a big failure for us, right? And we got loud about that, and we also talked about we would go to customers and tell them the work that we weren't going to do for them. We do 4 types of projects: things that make our government more efficient, things that protect human life, things that aid in quality living, and projects that support social justice. That's it. If it's not that, we won't work on your project, period. And people are like, well, why not? Why can't you do it? We don't do it. And we started talking a lot about our values, and that started attracting different types of people, right? Customers that cared about that started searching for us. And so I'd say the first setback was really probably an internal thing where we didn't know who we were. And when we came to Baltimore, we really found our voice and got really bullish about it.
So do you not do work with DoD anymore?
We do. We do work with DoD. So the line is we will do defensive technology, but no offensive technology.
All right. So let's talk about some of your other ventures.
Yep.
So you have started this Hutch program. Talk to us about that. Why? What was kind of the thought behind the Hutch? Like, talk to us. What is Hutch, and what was the reason for starting that program?
So we were growing as a small business. In our market, you're a small business, you're not, right? And you're a small business, and when you get to a certain revenue threshold, overnight your competition is billion-dollar companies, right? Booz Allen's, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, like Deloitte's of the world, et cetera. And so there's a huge advantage to be a small business. You get some set-aside potential contracts. And so we knew we were growing, and as you get bigger, we're going to need our own partners. So one was, how do we find like-minded partners that also care about social impact and the things that we care about? And we were having a hard time finding them, so that, well, why don't we grow some partners? So that was kind of one thing. Second thing was you look in the market and you don't see a ton of women-owned tech firms. You don't see a lot of minority-owned tech firms, and said, well, we think we can help that, right? And we have had years, decade of mistakes. Why don't we compile them and make a blueprint and say, don't do this, go be better than we were. So that's really what launched Hutch. So Hutch is a 2-year incubator that we run. Super nuts. It is long intentionally because to understand a marathon, you got to run a marathon. And so we want to see them over time press through stuff for 2 years with us. They meet every day for a full day session of the 2 years. There's classwork, pre-work, homework, but all of it's to build their own business, right? So things that they will learn are directly building their business as they go. And there's just so much to learn, and so we sequence it. You don't need all that. You need this right now. You'll learn the next thing next month and do that. You'll learn something next month and then do that, and we kind of baby step them forward. So Hutch is just turned 5 this week, actually. So we've got 5 cohorts, almost 30 companies in there. So we've got cybersecurity companies, data analytics companies, program management, data science. I mean, you name it, we've got a bunch of them in the gamut, and we're going to scale it to do more. So.
Dope. Yeah. So I do want to kind of talk a bit, give bigger context. I do want people to get an opportunity to kind of interact with you one-to-one. But before we get there, talk about you personally. Like, you're a family man.
Yeah.
You have a business. How do you kind of balance those things? Like, what's your day-to-day like?
Sam Tisha's still here, so I can't lie. I was going to lie. She wasn't here. Like, it's amazing. Amazing at balancing everything. I'm great. So I'm trying to look at her. I'm terrible at it. I'm awful at it. Business as a way, especially startup. We're not a startup anymore, but as a way of consuming you. Number one in general, especially during the startup period. Outside of that, it's just how I'm wired, right? I'm the person where, like, all right, now we got more people, like, I'm gonna go start something else. And I'm sure it drives her crazy, so I'm not trying to look at her. But I think a lot of it comes down to communication, right? And to me, my partner John talks all the time, like, this idea of work-life balance is a myth, right? Work bleeds into family.
You can't have it all.
Family break bleeds into work, and vice versa. So whatever's happening at home is affecting at work, and vice versa, right? And so you acknowledge that. And so really, what's important is to really find whatever your equilibrium point is, and that may be. It's not in the middle. It's a little bit more work or a little bit more family, but it works for your family, and your family's on the same page, and they give you space. I get to do this because my wife allows me to do this, right? She reels it in, then it's gonna get reeled in, right? And so there is a cost to being an entrepreneur, right? And that cost is something your whole family pays, not just you. And so if your family isn't on board with paying that cost, it's problematic. And so it's important, right? So there'll be, not everybody, but we'll be at the dinner table, and if my partner calls at 10 o'clock at night, I'm like, I gotta grab a call, right? She's got a crazy job too, right? And she may get a call at weird times. She needs the space. So for those who don't know, this is our former health commissioner as well.
Of the city of Baltimore. Right? Like, we're not talking about like bullshit.
So she led us through the pandemic. So if I'm the table and the mayor calls, she got to go take the call, right? Keep us alive. Tell us to wash our hands and put on a mask. So it's that give and take, right? Give and take part. I saw that we have an amazing, fun kid, Jaden. We share together. So we get two on the opposite ends of the spectrum. I got a kid in undergrad who has just turned 22. I remind him all the time. When I was your age, I had a kid that was 1. So better than you. And I ain't trying to be nobody grandfather. So stay focused. Stay focused. And we have a 7-year-old. So we have a 15-year gap between the two of them. We live in Baltimore. We moved to Baltimore in 2011 on a 1 to 2 year experiment. There was a community out in Howard County that we really liked that was getting developed. And we're like, we're gonna come for a couple of years and we'll go back out there, and we got stuck. So, and all the good ways in which Charm City can kind of put its hooks in you, and this is the place we've chosen to kind of do our work and make impact.
Everyone knows me. I'm a huge fan of Baltimore, huge proponent. So talk to me about like why Baltimore, and kind of where do you see kind of this community and Fearless's role in that kind of tech community in Baltimore development over the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, Baltimore is an interesting place, and I think kind of my first reactions to it. So I was born in DC and grew up in the area, but I mean we come to the aquarium, but we didn't hang out in Baltimore, right? And I remember moving here, and our friends weren't trying to come up, and that's kind of emphasis around BYP also. But I remember feeling that Baltimore is a place that if you wanted to do good work, you just kind of roll up your sleeves and get to work. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't need to kiss a bunch of rings and, ask, am I allowed to go help people? You just, as long as you're genuine, you're not here for just a photo op to go, that I found that the community leans in what you need, and they're supportive. And so that was something that kind of pulled us in pretty early. I also think Baltimore is a pretty genuine place. It's a place that very few people leave with hey, what you do? Who are you? Right? And it's more of
like DC.
Just what's up, like DC, right? You get in DC, who you work for? What's that? You a staffer? You all of that. What can I get from you, right? What can I get from you instead of who are you? What can I give you? How can I help you, right? And it feels very authentic here and what you see is what you get, better or worse. And I like that. Right? I don't like people faking. Who are you? Who aren't you? And so that's exciting about Baltimore, right? And I'm sure many of you know, everyone's been preaching this forever, right? About Baltimore and Black Wall Street coming back. But the narrative outside the city is the wire. And I look outside, and I'm seeing skyscrapers. So someone is putting money in Baltimore. I know what they're telling you, but I'm looking around, I see a skyscraper in the air, something's getting built, right? So stuff is happening, right? And you can kind of feel
are getting built.
Whole communities. So you can feel the momentum kind of in the air here in the city, and it's really dope to see and dope to be a part of, right? So when I think about the tech community, it's great. There's talent here. There's talent everywhere, right? And I think what we've traditionally lacked is not just resources, but kind of coming together, right? Collaborating a little bit more. And you're starting to see that start to happen. Black Tech Saturdays here and Epic Tech Tuesdays and what Upsurge is doing. And so there's a lot of initiatives that are trying to bring people together, I think, in a way that hasn't happened before. And so I think we're at the early stages of a pretty dope renaissance that's happening, right? From not just what's happening in City Hall, but our new governor right? And there's a lot of attention and resources starting to come to Baltimore. And so I think we have a really cool moment here to do something special.
And with that, that's a perfect time to wrap things up. So Delali's dope. And so I want to give y'all the opportunity to interact with him. And so that is it.
Question for the group.
Oh yeah, questions, yeah, I guess.
So you talk about kind of the growth of the company, and I'm a huge sports guy. You think about, all right, everybody's not going to go along and get you to the next step. I always think about Toronto Raptors. Trade the best player, fire coach of the year, and win the championship the next year.
Yep.
Like as you've grown, like how have you managed the process from getting the right people at 5 million to 17 million to 100 million? Like how have you gone out and known this is what I need to get to this next point?
By struggling. It's been hard, right? And my kind of nature by default is I love everybody, right? They don't let me hire people anymore, right? Because I'll even interview them like they're so dope. Like, what about like they love kids, they got a cool dog, they love the community. Like, but can they code? I mean, I don't know. Just give them a chance. I'll give them a chance, right? And they're like, sir, you got to go at the end because we got to make sure they can do the job. So I mean, early on in the company, I mean, we lost very few people. We hardly fired anybody. Like, you just weren't, we're the company traditionally that we would, if you're not like performing, we would coach you for 15 years. Like, come on, you can get there. Come on. Right. And we also, which is like real far, right, left, right. And we also don't want to be the company where it's like, you do something once, you cut through, right. Mm-hmm. But there is a balance about empathy and taking care of people, but you got to perform, right. We got to make sure that we can grow and count on each other as we grow. And so we're probably still here and we're starting to try to come center because we need it at this next stage. Right, we won't be able to scale. We won't survive if we don't get tighter in how we run the business. And so, I think I've learned, and I'm learning now about the different types of people you need. So right now we're in a phase of what we're calling Fearless 3.0. Implies we got a 1 and 2. Right. If I'd put years on them, 1 was probably from day 1 up until about 2016. So that was that first like 14, 15 people, which was like. Just the startup be like, let's figure this thing out. Like, can we get a model? Can we get some repeat customers? Is there a thing here? Is there not? And in that stage, you need scrappy people and creative people. Figure it out. Like, we don't have a process. We don't have a thing. No, we don't have benefits yet. We'll figure it out, right? And just, you need people that are just willing to kind of go with the flow and just like make things happen, right? And you got to create from nothing, right? And so I think that that's important, like skill set for like a 1.0 kind of person, right? Then we got 2.0. And so in 1.0 also, the split was I did all the business development and sales, and my partner John had to like go execute the jobs, right? So I can make all the promises, and I'm tapped in, so like, yeah, we can do that. And he's like, we can't do that. I'm like, figure it out, right? And so it's just us two, right? It wasn't until 2.0 when we started getting an executive team. Like, okay, we got departments now. We getting fancy, right? And we had like an actual team. We can like build some processes and infrastructure, and we didn't all have to do everything ourselves. And that team also needs to be able to operate from a little bit of chaos, but bring some order, right? And what we're finding now at this scale of 3.0 to go to the next stage, it's different skill set. And the skill set now is you gotta be able to take a platform and scale it, which is like tight processes, very repeatable, right? We gotta know, we talk to 10 people, 4 are gonna close because we gotta say these things. And so it's very methodical, right? And that stage drives me crazy. I am a 0 to 1, maybe 1.5 person, right? And so I need to be in a space where I can create and I can move fast and break stuff. And even in this stage, if I want to do something, I gotta get 15 people around the table. I'm like, let's do this. And they wow, we shouldn't. And pros and cons. I could have finished already, right? And so I gotta hide. So I gotta hide from people and like do stuff. I have secret projects. I just kind of hide in the corner and try to get stuff done. But it's important to know who's on your team and also what kind of person you are, right? That you need to surround yourself with. And so to me, what we've had to do at this stage is bring on like really strong operators. And so this year, actually we just did it within the last like 6 months, we reorganized the company from a one entity to now more of an enterprise structure. So now Fearless is a larger holdco. We've got a president for our digital division, which is our tech division. We did a small acquisition and we got a new president there, and we're starting to build out other divisions. So we have an operator for each of those, right? Because they need to take this and figure out how to scale it, and it will drive me crazy doing that, right? And so, but now I get to go create the new ones, right? And do the stuff that I'm good at and I can bring value in. So yeah, completely different skill sets, and I'm learning my way through that. Yep.
It's funny you talk about this whole like you have your own secrets, like divisions.
Don't record that. Don't record. Don't.
But I'm about to bring because so I listened to there's a podcast that I listen to called Acquired, where it's like a long form of like businesses that they like will like talk through like how they've grown. Like it's like 4 or 5 hours for each company, and so they did one on Lockheed Martin. And they talked about how Lockheed has like this division which does exactly what it sounds like you're doing. They want to move fast even as they're kind of scaling this business. So I find that interesting. Any other questions?
So, curious about some of the things you talked about development. You know, what got you from 1 to 5? Because I was, and I remember years ago where, you were stuck at, 10 million for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Because some of the things you're talking about, people that I brought in the beginning that helped me hustle to get to that point, I couldn't let them go.
Yeah,
Because
it's hard.
I mean,
It's hard.
swear what they put into
It's
the
hard.
business. So how do you get out of your own way? And also how do you transition those people? Because who got you to that point is not the same skill set as you mentioned. How
Yeah.
did you deal with those other people that pretty much were in the trenches with you and then finally, the company has outgrown them?
Yeah. So early on in the company, and I used to do this for every employee until we maybe were like 40-some people. I used to have what I call passion meetings with people, which is, what are you passionate about? What do you love? Right? What do you want to do? Can't guarantee it, but if I can, we're gonna find a way to get you in a position in which you love. And that ended up being a whole department of people that did that across the company. But really, I think for us, and we got to think our whole mascot's around purple cows, right? Remarkable purple cows. I'll tell you that story in a little bit, but. We're starting to move to this process around trying to get people in what we call the bullseye, which is think of a Venn diagram. It's got 3 circles, right? Number 1, what are you good at? Number 2, what are you passionate about? Number 3, what does the organization need, right? What brings value to this organization, right? And so you may be passionate about something and we need it, but you're not good at it. Right? If you intersect there, you're in the training zone. Right? In the training zone, that means the skills aren't there. We're going to try to get the skills there. Right? Now, if you are good at something and we need it, but you're not passionate about it, you're in the I'm going to take one for the team zone. And you put people there long enough, they're going to leave. Right? And so we're trying to figure out these different pieces of this Venn diagram and what zone you might be in and how do we attack it. But the perfect spot is you're good at it, you're passionate about it, and we need it. Yes, we got somebody in the bullseye, right? That's a perfect spate. But the needs of the business change all the time, right? So you have to consistently evaluate people. You might have been in the bullseye last year, but now you got to go find something else zone, right? And so it's something you have to keep a strong pulse on, right? And be upfront with people, right? This is what the organization needs now, right? And give people a chance, like you might be able to grow with it, but here's expectation, right? Expectation is this, and a lot of it is driven by accountability. And I think that's something that we hadn't done a good job on, right? So traditionally, if someone wasn't performing at scale, let's say it's like sales or business development, I'm jumping in or my partner's jumping in and we're like filling the gap. So we're now doing this job and not our job, right? And so for a long time, people are like, okay, we almost finished with our strategic plan. What's next? I haven't had time to think about the vision. That's my job. I should be doing this, but I'm not because I'm doing this because the accountability wasn't there for someone to be able to do the role right. So it's hurting us there and hurting us for our future.
So like as you're continuing to grow and expand, are you doing like add-on acquisitions, or have you structured, or are you considering some sort of like CVC or a corporate venture capital fund for the company in order to incubate these technology companies? That way you don't have to dedicate or allocate your time towards doing what you just mentioned, but expanding via, again, acquisition. It's like de-risking the transition or the.
We're thinking about all of the above. I mean, we're when I say early in this process, we're early in this process, right? And 3.0 for us started like a year ago, right? And almost all of last year was just a restructure. And kind of how we got to this point was thinking through our vision. So our mission is to build software with a soul. And our vision is to create a world where good software powers things that matter. And I say it all the time. I get goosebumps when I say it. I love it, right? And about a year, I guess 2 years ago at this point, I started feeling really restless and like, what's next and where are we going? And it was because I wasn't spending time doing my job, thinking about vision. I was doing all the other stuff, right? So I didn't know where we were going next, right? We'd almost accomplished all the goals we wanted to set. And the word that really bugged me in our vision, I started to read it different one day, was we're going to create a world where good software powers things that matter. And I was like, I don't think we're doing that. And the team said, what do you mean? I said, we have never had a conversation about global in our whole history. There's no plan, there's no strategy, there's no anything, right? So either the vision needs to change, which is not, or we got to do something different. And so we took a step back, and out of that was kind of birthed our 3.0 vision and goals through 2030, right? And that we're calling our 100-10-1 plan, which is by 2030, we'll improve 100 million lives across 10 countries and be $1 billion in revenue. So to do that, we're not going to get there organically, right? So now we got the goal, and now we're starting to break down, okay, what structure do we need? How are we going to split it up? Who's going to run what? Do we need capital? And so there probably will be a mix of organic and inorganic acquisitions that we'll do in the future. We actually completed our first acquisition a couple months ago that we just announced. And so that's one out the gate. We've just about done with that integration, and then we're going to figure out how to do some more.
Crazy thing, it's just I see you in terms of just like worlds colliding. So I found out about this acquisition because a friend of mine from college, I went to USC Chapel Hill, he posted on LinkedIn about, we've just been acquired by Fearless, so like it's crazy. So like I was like, like it's a really good friend of mine from like undergrad was acquired by Fearless Shagun, our guy. So that's just crazy about worlds colliding.
Yeah, so my question was actually because you know how they were saying that Baltimore is now going to be like the tech hub of the state, and you guys are founded in Baltimore, but since you guys are growing, do you see yourself like venturing outside of the city?
Yes. Yeah. So, and those who may not know, Tech Hubs was an initiative out of the White House. So it's a U.S. designation that they're trying to find where these innovations hubs might happen in the country outside of like, Silicon Valley or Boston or whatever it is. And so they put out an application across the country to figure out who wanted to be designated Tech Hub. Like, what do you specialize in? What do you want to be known for? So they had 400 plus applications from across the country, and they picked 31 designations. Baltimore was picked as one of the 31 across the country, and so we now have the federal designation of precision medicine and AI, and it is a $10 billion initiative. And so the first chunk of money would be the first chunk of that money is 500 million, and those 31 now are putting in their phase 2 to try to get part of that 500 million. And then the rest will start opening up in future years. So we're part of that initiative. There was a whole consortium of people, like 40 plus organizations that were part of that. But yes, our plan is 10 countries. So that's going to start with a national expansion first, and then international.
First of all, congrats, man.
Thank you, brother.
Everything, man. Just truly a role model of what you're doing. Two-part question. One, how do you continue to pour into yourself so that you can pour into others? I definitely agree with you that work-life balance is a myth. How do you continue to fuel yourself, whether it's spiritual, whether it's health? Like, what do you do there? And then on the business side, as you continue to scale, how do you think about the processes that you have to put in place to reach that goal?
Before you answer that, I do just want to take a second because the questions that have been asked and made me just think about like what I talked about earlier in terms of like people who are in this room and the network that's here, right? So for those of you that know, those of you who've been in Baltimore for a while, this is Kyle Connor, who was one of the founders of the Startup Nest, which is where we used to do all our brunch and our sales. It was one of the first Black-owned co-working spaces here in Baltimore. We have connected and been cool ever since, but like I just want y'all to understand kind of the room that we're talking to. So Kyle, obviously super dope, right? And I've been friends with Kyle, just really upstanding guy. The other people have asked, especially Isaiah Payne, he's an investment banker that I actually met at a conference in Philadelphia. I invited him today because we were at a breakfast meeting for this organization called Association for Corporate Growth, of which Kendra is the executive director. And I was like, you should be in this room to meet Delali. Uh, After I left the meeting, ACG this morning, I went to go have coffee with Kwame Kuade, who asked that other question, who I invited to yesterday to come to this meeting. So Kwame is gonna be 100% one of my sit down conversations, because Kwame, I actually met Kwame years ago. So Kwame had actually been on Shark Tank, had gotten funded, had this business like a gift card rescue, I think was the name of the company. So like, and has gone through kind of the entrepreneur. He currently is running EO, which stands for Entrepreneurs Organization here in Maryland. So we've been talking about ways that we can use some of the research that he has for BYP and kind of building on the network. So again, just like realize the people who are in the room, right? Like it's not just like, it's like fly by night. Like there are some people in this room outside of the people who are speaking who have real, like, can help to add to kind of whatever we're trying to do. We have it in our community. I always say we all we got, we all we need. Like this is it, right?
What was the question again?
Right.
Jeez. I didn't mess that up. I know. I didn't
Thanks for the
expect you to bring
sermonettes.
that up, but it was necessary though.
I know, I'm messing with I'm messing with him. So how do I recharge? How do I pour it? I think a couple ways. Like for me, the first thing, so I like to exercise, right? Exercise, like it's to stress out and all that stuff. And I got to exercise in the morning. If I don't, it probably won't happen. I won't exercise in the morning if I can't get up early. I can't get up early if I don't sleep early, right? And so it's really, to me, I spiral either up or down really, really fast. And when I'm tired, I'm eating junk and gummy bears all day in the office, trying to get energy. And so like maintaining that and trying to eat healthy is one way that I pour myself. And so Tisha's amazing cooks. We also have amazing things and healthy things to eat. Shout out like that to eat at the house. But really that's a big part of it. I think like that part refuels me a little bit. I love startup stuff. Like this stuff energizes me. The second part of the question about the process is that drains me. It drains me. So part of me staying healthy is trying to stay away from that stuff and not do those things. I gotta create. That stuff makes me feel alive. I need the whiteboard. I need the problem that I don't know how to solve, and I need to figure it out. Outside of that, I try to do quarterly retreats by myself. We both do them. We'll take turns doing them, and they work when I schedule them in the beginning of the year for the whole year. Right? It is on the calendar. They don't move. Everything that you try to put on my calendar, it will auto reject. And I'll check myself in a hotel, right, for the weekend. And it's sleep, think, read, watch TV, whatever it is, whatever you do to kind of recharge. And that's me baking in the break before I need the break, or I won't, and I'll burn out, right? And so those things are important, right? I think also for me, again, I mentioned exercise, but work hard, play hard, right? And so I'll take time. We do vacations. Get some eyes there. Do vacations. We'll do them together. We'll do some solo. We'll got the baby. That's 7 now. But and so that stuff energizes me. Like, but it really is put that stuff on the calendar up front, right? You put it on the calendar up front. Something is always gonna happen. There's always a meeting. There's always a customer thing. You know what I mean? There's always something that's gonna pop up. And if you're disciplined about I'm going to need the break later, then to me that helps to keep me energized. I'd say the last thing is, I'm trying to get better at that, is really ensuring that I've got a buffer between every meeting, at least 15 minutes. And it's a way to exit a meeting and then pause and think about what kind of headspace do I need to be in to enter this other meeting, right? You're tired, but this is the person's first day and they're excited to talk to you, right? And if I'm on the call, I'm all like, and then what kind of impression is that? And so it's like thinking about that for like half a second, like, okay, how do I ground myself and what does this meeting need from me right now, right? What do I need? What does this meeting need from me? And how do I show up like that? It's been like a practice I've been trying to really improve.
Ask us about, I laughed because I made me think of something as he was talking. I remember he made me think of something. So Delali's one of the first people that made me like appreciate having breakfast meetings. And I remember like I was trying to get all these guys, and I had some dumb idea back in the day, I'm sure. And I was trying to get him to build something. And I was trying to get him to build something for probably like a really low price. And he was really like trying to mess with me. And I remember like we had breakfast, and I was like, my God, it's like, why are we meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning? Like, you're my friend. Like, we can go kick it in the evening. Like, we don't have to do this. But and you probably don't remember this. This was probably like 6-7 years ago. And you said because, this way you can get it out of the way and you prioritize it. You put it on the calendar. You can get this out of the way so that your day doesn't get away from you. And ever since then, I've been trying to have breakfast meetings. So
I hate lunch meetings. Yeah, I hate lunch meetings. I hate lunch meetings.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Thank you. I'm Michelle Brooks, not as decorated as some of the other folks in the room, but I am a lead infrastructure engineer at T. Rowe Price.
Dope.
And I started seeing people with Fearless shirts on at a time I was ready to go. I'm curious of the inspiration for the name Fearless and what you mentioned about purple boo. Like, can you talk about that?
Yeah. So the inspiration for the name was interesting, right? And I remember I was talking to Tish and wasn't sure what we would call it. And mind you, I feel like I've been prepped for this forever. I feel like I was born to do this. And even though I've done that and I've done a bunch of startups and learned a lot and felt like I had whatever I needed to get started, when it came time to quit my full-time job with my baby in the house and like, all right, this is it. I was terrified. I was terrified. So one thing was the name was deeply personal, right? And it's really hard to wake up every day and you're scared to do a thing and the company's name is Fearless, right? And so it was a mental thing like, all right, do it, right? Do it scared. You know what I mean? And just keep pressing through. So that was one. Two, when we started off in the DoD contracting space, I mean, it's like acronym soup. There's, ABC Corporation, DEF Technology, so-and-so Solutions. And I wanted something that was going to pop on the page, right? And you're looking down, you see a company named Fearless, like, well, what's that? And so the legal entity name is Fearless Solutions, but we've never gone by Fearless Solutions. We've always gone by Fearless. So our close always just at Fearless. People say, well, what is that? And it forced the conversation, right? And all of a sudden, people are coming up asking us, and we're getting leads that, if we would have put the whole name, no one would have cared, right? And so it's something that keeps us going, but really is this reminder to don't be scared to do something different. Don't be scared to break the status quo. Don't be scared to be yourself and show up authentically as you at work, at home, wherever you are, right? And I think that's been really our key to success. And the second part, yes, for Purple Cow. Purple Cow. Purple Cow is a book by an author named Seth Godin. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's got tons of books. He writes some really interesting stuff. But he's a marketing guy, right? And so he gives a story about, let's say you're going down to the country to visit your family. You got your kids in the car, and you're driving. And you see a brown cow, right? Stop for half a second and the kids get excited. Oh, Dad, look, there's a cow over there, right? Before you know it, back to the video games, back to the phone, keep driving, right? Half a mile later, you see a second brown cow. Looks a lot like the first brown cow, right? And after a while, you see brown cow after brown cow after brown cow after brown cow. And he talks about, what if you're driving and you saw a purple cow? Now, you see a purple cow, you're going to stop the car, right? You're going to stop the car. It's going to compel you and make you pay attention. It's going to make you talk, right? So he talks about this idea of being remarkable, that this purple cow is something that makes you make a remark. And he translates this to business and talks about how in business, so many of us are brown cows. We look the same, we sound the same, and people ignore us, right? Spam, you email them to death, right? All that stuff, right? They ignore your stuff. But nobody ignores the purple cow. Everybody stops and sees purple cow. And so we started internalizing. In fact, every company gets the book. That's where we got, the purple works really good in Baltimore, but it was purple before Baltimore. It's actually from the book. That's where we adopted it from. And it was our reminder, like, be remarkable, everything. And client engagements, and how we treat people internally, how we support our community. and it isn't. And it's not that you're remarkable because you want people to talk. You're just remarkable, and that makes people talk. And for us, that's really been our motto to really keep and stay special.
All right, we're gonna have. You still have your question?
Yeah, I'll be quick. This might be a
Yeah, this is the last question. So I want y'all to be able to network, and y'all gotta get out of here.
Again, congrats on all your success.
Thank you.
So running a company as big as yours, just running a company, period, you wish you could have a mulligan, right?
You say, "But you have what?"
You would wish sometimes an opportunity you would have a mulligan, right?
Mhm.
What's one of your biggest regrets that you wish, an opportunity that you wish you could have pursued?
He was like, "Oh, there's no regrets." And let me think. Do I really have a regret? This is gonna sound weird, but I wish that we would have been ourselves sooner.
That's the mulligan. It's perfect.
Yep.
It's perfect.
Yep. When I started in the world we started, it was not uncommon to be the only black person in the room in a lot of those spaces, and so. Everyone was suited and booted, and I felt like, oh, this is how I need to show up, and I don't like that stuff. Nothing wrong with it. Better when you do it well, but you know what I mean. But I want to put my sneakers on. I'm like, geez, I'm a t-shirt and hoodie, and so that's comfortable to me, right? And I felt like I had to do it that way because they're successful, so I have to do it like this. And as crazy as it sounds, like, and I had this kind of thing in my head, the stigma around black companies, right? I didn't want to be the best black company. I want to be the best company, period, right? And so. We want to make sure that we were seen and having quality in what we do, right? And again, the stigma so many times around black companies. So early on, like, I was dressed up at work, right? I like sneakers. I'm scared. I own the company. I'm scared. I don't want to wear my Jordans to work. Like, oh, we can't wear Jordans to work. I can't wear that stuff to school. And I remember that I can't remember who bought them. Maybe the company. I remember I bought a pair of Nikes. They were just Nikes. Black had a purple Nike sign on. And I was like, maybe I could try. I'm gonna try wear these to work, see what happens, right? And again, I'm nervous. I'm telling like because I want to be like black dude, that guy, right? And no one said anything. I was like, oh, I can wear these. All right, cool. Started wearing them. Started wearing other shoes. 2 weeks later, everyone else started wearing their sneakers, right? And I'm like, oh, so all y'all like it? Oh, y'all like it. But it's a thing that you give people permission to just be themselves, right? And it became this space where, we're here to code. Like, who cares what you're wearing and how you show up? But it took us a while to get there. And that's when we, I think, really started to take off.
All right. With that, I will put a close to this official part of this conversation. I want y'all to have an opportunity to actually sit and talk with Delali and interact with each other. So with that, we'll bring this into a close. Thanks again for coming to our first sit-down series. We will be doing more. We have a ton of really interesting. Just go ahead. Y'all done? Y'all done back? We have a bunch of really interesting people who we have lined up to have these conversations, and so hope y'all will join us for the next one. All right.
Appreciate you, sir.
Good job.